Hello my dear friends, you're in the Military Summary channel, and today we will discuss the situation in Ukraine on the 12th of December of 2025. Today we have a lot of very interesting updates, so let's start. And of course today the most important updates are coming from the area of the city of Kupyansk, where the Ukrainians most likely launched unexpected counteroffensive operation that, according to information we have, led to complete collapse of the Russian defense on the western bank of the river Oskol. So this is the map that you can see right now in front of your screens, is the map by the end of the 12th of December of 2025. So we have a lot of updates, as you can see, and sometimes these updates oppose each other. So first, before we start, we would like to discuss with you once again the statement that was made by the Chief of the General Staff of the Armed Forces of the Russian Federation, Valery Gerasimov. Yesterday he reported to the President of the Russian Federation, Vladimir Putin, that during the previous 24-48 hours, the settlements of Kucherevka and Kurilovka were captured by the Armed Forces of the Russian Federation. So when talking about the Kupyansk direction, the settlements of Kurilovka and Kucherevka are located on the eastern bank of the river Oskol. So this is the first settlement that was captured according to pro-Russian sources, and based on the report published by the General Staff of the Armed Forces of the Russian Federation, we adjusted the map. So we colored the village and the complete control of the Armed Forces of the Russian Federation. But the most important thing, that by the end of the 12th of December of 2025, we still haven't received anything that can confirm Russian control over the territory. Of course, we are waiting for a video, or we're waiting for the video. Yes, this is the only way how to prove Russian control, but we still haven't received anything. Furthermore, the Chief of the General Staff of the Russian Federation stated that the settlement of Kucherevka was also captured. The Armed Forces of the Russian Federation took under control the villages of Kucherevka and Kurilovka. But when talking about the village of Kucherevka, this village, according to information we have, was captured on the 7th of December of 2025. The units of the Group of Forces West managed to establish complete control over the territory, and that was stated by the 7th of December of 2025 during another report published by the Minister of Defense of the Russian Federation. So, and of course, based on these updates, we were adjusting the map, and basically we've just discussed the situation, let's call it like this, by the morning of the 12th of December of 2025, and right after the pro-Ukrainian sources began publishing updates, and the first report was published by the pro-Ukrainian mappers. These, let's say, changes, these adjustments were made on the pro-Ukrainian sources, and here, as you can see, according to pro-Ukrainian sources, the Ukrainians, as a result of counter-offensive operation, managed to improve their positions significantly on the western bank of the river Oskol. So let's compare the map between the dates. This is the situation by the end of the 11th of December of 2025, and this is the situation by the end of the 12th of December of 2025. The Ukrainians managed to recapture a significant number of territories, trenches, fortifications, strongholds. So a lot of territories were recaptured by the Ukrainians. Furthermore, and the most important is that Ukrainians managed to get the river Oskol. So basically the western part of the city of Kupyansk lost any supply and support, with the northern part of the Kupyansk direction, let's say with the village by the name of Dvorechnya. Now you Russians who are located on the Ukrainian side of the river Oskol have possibilities to be supplied and support from the eastern bank just with drones. I'm not sure that the Russians are able to use the river Oskol and this territory for these purposes, basically because this territory, according to pro-Ukrainian mappers, is a huge gray zone. So Russians have just two islands of resistance, more or less reliable islands of resistance, on the western bank of the river of Oskol, on the western side of the city of Kupyansk. Furthermore, based on this report, as you can see, we just added a very big gray zone, so which means that we still haven't received anything from the Ukrainian side as well that can confirm the Ukrainian control over the territory. But a few hours later, after this, let's say, report published by pro-Ukraine mappers, we received another video, this time published by the President of Ukraine, Zelensky. So this is the video, and as you can see, according to this video, Zelensky was located right on the entrance to the city of Kupyansk itself. President President Vladimir Zelensky in Kupyansk, which is under the control of the Russian armed forces. Today is the Kupyansk direction. Our soldiers who are achieving results for Ukraine here. Many Russians have talked about Kupyansk. We see it. I was there. I congratulated the guys. Thank you to every unit, everyone who is fighting here, everyone who is destroying the occupier. That was stated by Zelensky right at the entrance to the city of Kupyansk. This position and this place was geolocated. This is exactly the point where Zelensky made the video. Of course, when the video was published, the pro-Russian sources began saying that this video is archived. This video was made in 1919 or before, let's say, in the previous century, or maybe this video was made 500 years ago. So, of course, as the first reaction from the Russian sources was exactly like this. Everybody was saying that this video is archived, but this video most likely is not archived. This video wasn't made, let's say, today. Maybe this video was made yesterday or the day before yesterday, but this video and the fact that this video was made probably 2 or maybe 3 days ago doesn't change the entire situation. The Ukrainians indeed launched a counter-offensive operation. For example, this was also discussed by different neutral mappers several days ago. The Ukrainians are counter-attacking. We need to understand that Ukraine currently pays significant price for this counter-offensive operation. And if you ask my opinion, I would like to ask just one simple question: why the Ukrainians decided to counter-attack in the Kupyansk direction, but the Ukrainians are not doing anything with the city of Mirnograd. So this is telling the truth, the most important question: why the Ukrainians decided to sacrifice with the city of Pokrovsk and the city of Mirnograd in favor of the city of Kupyansk. So this is a very big question that most likely describes and gives us the understanding of the things that are going to be developed in the future. Anyway, the Russians still control the central part of the city of Kupyansk, the most fortified, the biggest stronghold. The Russians will fight, so obviously they will not give up these territories so easy for Ukrainians. There are going to be very heavy clashes, but we believe that everything will be resolved in coming days or in coming hours. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 days and everything, and we will understand everything. We will understand whether the Ukrainians are able to restore control over the territories, or Ukrainians would be defeated and they would be forced to fall back further in the western direction. Because if Ukrainians are able to take under control the western bank of the city of Kupyansk, it doesn't mean anything. They will not move further on the eastern bank. They will not cross the river Voskol. They will try to hold their positions on this bank, and probably this will allow the Ukrainians to evacuate their soldiers and their troops from the cities of Kupyansk, Kozlovoy, Podol, and many other settlements in this area, but this will not allow the Ukrainians to continue counter-offensive. It seems that the Ukrainians are tasked to establish complete control over the river Voskol and to establish and not allow the Russians to move further and deeper inside of the Kharkiv region. Because I would like to remind you that also yesterday the chief of the General Staff of the Armed Forces of the Russian Federation stated that the Russians of the group of forces North are focusing their efforts on expanding the security zone in the Sumy and Kharkiv regions. So the Russians continue their offensive operation along the northeastern border of Ukraine with the purpose to get deeper, to get closer to the cities of Kharkiv and Sumy. For example, in this area, several mappers reported that the Russians have already managed to improve their positions around the villages of Kondratovka and Andreevka, so some territories were recaptured. So most likely this is exactly what the chief of the general staff of the armed forces of the Russian Federation was talking about. And the Russians continue counter-offensive operation in the area of the city of Volchansk. During the previous 24 hours, huge changes were recorded in this area. So this is the situation by the end of the 10th of December. By the end of the 11th of December, the Russians stated that they managed to capture the settlement of Liman. And by the end of the 12th of December, the Russians improved their positions even more and advanced further in the southern direction towards the villages of Seminivka, Gravskaya, and Prilipovka. So the situation is a very complicated one, first of all, for the Russian forces. Let's wait and see what is going to be next. But now one thing is clear. The Ukrainians are trying to establish complete control over the western bank of the city of Oskol. The Russians are trying to do the same, but from the eastern side of the same river. So maybe this Ukrainian counter-offensive operation is not even a counter-offensive operation. Maybe, who knows, maybe this is already a part of a deal, you know, that the sources, according to different insights, according to some projects and some drafts agreements that were being discussed between Russians, Ukrainians, and the US sides, the Russians would be forced to withdraw their positions in the Kharkiv region. Who knows, maybe this counter-offensive operation is already a part of those negotiations and those drafts agreements. Maybe the Russians, according to these possible agreements, will have the border and will have positions just along the river Oskol. So maybe the river Oskol is going to be something like a natural barrier between Russia and Ukraine in the future. So maybe this counter-offensive operation is just something like a media counter-attack to show that Ukrainians are counter-attacking, but at the same time it's just something like a plan, like a bigger plan for the peaceful settlement of the conflict. Who knows? Anyway, on this matter, today the special aide, Putin's special aide Ushakov, made a very interesting statement. Today, Ushakov stated that the entire Donbas is Russian, but a demilitarized zone could be created there. That was stated by Ushakov, the special representative of the President of the Russian Federation. He said that it's entirely possible that there won't be any troops there, either Russian or Ukrainian. Yes, but there will be the Russian National Guard or police, everything necessary to maintain order and organized life, said the Russian President aide. The entire Donbas is Russian, he emphasized, commenting on Zelensky's idea of a referendum on the territorial issue. Zelensky's goal is in the negotiations in Europe is to introduce proposals into US peace documents that are unacceptable to Russia. You know that I noted that for some reason the Russians shown a very, very negative reaction, negative attitudes towards the possibility of a referendum in Ukraine. For example, if you ask my opinion, I believe that having a referendum on the territory of Ukraine before ceasefire, before any truth, before president elections is the best option for every single side, both for the Russians, for Ukrainians, for the United States of America, and for the European Union. So why do I think like this? The problem is that the re-election of the president of Ukraine doesn't guarantee that the war will be finished. You know that currently Ukraine has a very, let's say slow, very not very powerful, very weak political position, because Zelensky is not being recognized as a legal president from many countries, and especially he's not being recognized as the legal president from the Russian Federation, which means that Ukraine has a very weak political position. According to this understanding of the constitution from the Russian side, Ukrainians are not able to have any negotiations, any talks, any documents signed with the Russian Federation. So that is why to resolve this problem, Ukraine needs a legal president. But once again, having a legal president in Ukraine, the re-election of anyone else, including Zelensky, on the position of Zelensky, doesn't mean that the war will be finished. From the other side, this can mean that Ukraine will have better political positions, and the Russian Federation will be forced to talk with the new president of Ukraine, which means that the Russian Federation will be forced to accept everything that the new president of Ukraine can do from his side. So that is why for the Russian side, it is better to have to force Ukraine to have referendum first before president elections. Why is that? Because referendum is something like the situation when the Ukrainian government will ask every single citizen of Ukraine, including those citizens who are located abroad, let's say in the territory of Europe, so in the territory of the rest of the world, and the Ukrainian government will ask people a simple question: whether the Ukrainians are able to accept the territorial concessions in favor of last and peace and the last truce and the peaceful settlement of the conflict in Ukraine. So because I can't tell you for sure, and probably nobody can tell you for sure, that Ukrainians will accept this. So I believe that there are still lots of Ukrainians who believe that it's better to continue war with the Russian Federation with the purpose to return and to restore the borders of Ukraine in the configuration of 1991 using the military means, which means that if referendum votes, if people of Ukraine, citizens of Ukraine, during the referendum votes, let's say, for the prolongation of the war with the Russian Federation until the borders of 1991, this means that the Russian Federation don't need the strong position of the president of Ukraine. So from this perspective, Zelensky is the best candidate for the Russian Federation for this possible period of time. But at the same time, if the citizens of Ukraine votes for the territorial concessions and they vote to accept the demands of the Russian Federation, of course, from this perspective, this can be also something like a law, something like as a must situation for the election process and for the next president of Ukraine, because the next president of Ukraine will not be able to avoid the position of the Ukrainian population. And obviously, the next president of Ukraine would be the president of Ukraine who will represent the position of the population of Ukraine that we will understand during the referendum in Ukraine. So I'm saying that referendum is a very good idea, and I think that most likely the countries, European Union, Ukraine, Russia, and the United States of America will move using this situation, this path. This will allow both the Russians and the Ukrainians to continue fighting along the line of combat contact, but at the same time, we will understand what the Ukrainians want right now, to finish the war or to continue or to stop the special military operation. Because, for example, the president of the United States of America stated that 82% of Ukrainians want to finish the war. 82%. And this is a very big number. So that was stated by the president of the United States of America yesterday. Zelensky needs to be realistic. 82% of Ukrainians are demanding peace. They are losing a huge number of people. So, but who can confirm these numbers? The only way how to confirm these numbers is to make a referendum. And if these numbers are correct, nobody in Ukraine has the rights to continue the special military operation. Basically, they will be forced to stop the war with the Russian Federation. Anyway, let's continue, and let's continue with the northeastern part of the Kharkiv region. The Russians also managed to improve their positions in the area of the villages of Ambarna and Dvorechinska. The Russians improved the territories around the settlements. Most likely these villages would be captured in coming days, and then Russians will continue offensive operation further in the western direction towards the settlements of Khatnya and, of course, the settlement of Kolodezny. So this is the situation in this area. Now let's move further and let's talk about the city of Siversk. During the previous video, we discussed the situation in this area. The Russians managed to establish complete control over the territory of the city of Siversk. Basically, as we can see, according to the changes, that the front line in here and the defense and the front line in this area from Ukrainian side collapsed somewhere on the 6th of December of 2025, when the Russians managed to improve their positions on the most eastern part of the city. And right after this moment, the Russians have improved their positions significantly. And by the end of the 12th of December of 2025, the Russians managed to capture the entire city of Siversk, and the Russians published this video of 10 minutes and 14 seconds where we can see lots of episodes how Russians were raising their flags through the entire city. Dozens of flags were raised, most of them were geolocated, at least the most important ones were geolocated. So based on this video, based on the report of the Chief of the General Staff of the Armed Forces of the Russian Federation, based on the Minister of Defense, based on many reports, we have adjusted the map completely. Ukrainians left the city of Siversk, and now Ukrainians are trying to organize defense in the fields, but something tells me that Ukrainians will not be able to do this. Something tells me that Ukrainians collected everything they have in the area of the city of Kupyansk. This is something like their final counter-offensive operation, and one of the purposes of this counterattack could be the strengthening of the Ukrainian negotiation positions before Saturday, before the 13th of December of 2025, because, as you know, tomorrow there's going to be a meeting on the territory of the European countries where Europeans are going to discuss the situation in Ukraine. Representatives from Ukraine, the US, and Europe will meet on Saturday to discuss a peace plan according to Axios. So Zelensky is trying to strengthen his positions. He's trying to bring these updates to the President of the United United States of America, Donald Trump. He's going to show him and to tell him that Donald Trump, you shouldn't believe Russians, because we see we have recaptured the city of Kupyansk, and everything what Russians are saying doesn't have any common with reality. So he's going to bring this message tomorrow to the President of the United States of America. And today, for example, the President of State stated that the US has not yet decided whether to attend the meeting with Europe on Ukraine tomorrow. So I'm not very difficult to understand what exactly he was talking about. But now Ukraine has a very strong cards before this meeting. But at the same time, the Russians have strong cards as well. They managed to take under complete control the city of Siversk, a very powerful stronghold. So, and telling the truth, we expect that this meeting is going to happen tomorrow on the 13th of December of 2025, which means that very likely that Russians can launch a very powerful massive attack with drones and missiles through Ukraine this upcoming night, or the Russians may launch a very powerful counter-offensive operation in the area of the city of Kupyansk with the purpose to restore control over these territories, and maybe even to make a video with the flag right exactly at the point where Zelensky made today or several days ago. So the video right exactly in this area can be a very strong card for Russians before the Saturday's meeting between the European countries, the United States of America and Ukraine. So let's wait and see what is going to be next, but the stakes are very high. We see this, and we see that now the Russians, the Ukrainians are fighting for every single square kilometer, but the problem is that Russians have more resources, much more resources in comparison with Ukraine. As for the other front lines, during the previous 24 hours, we haven't received anything special from the city of Mirnograd. The Ukrainians are in a very poor position. There, the pro-Ukrainian sources are saying that the Russians basically reducing the territory of Mirnograd till ruins. The Ukrainian commanders still haven't ordered the Ukrainians to surrender or to start talks. And some sources are saying that currently nobody believes that the Ukrainians who are currently located in the pocket of the city of Mirnograd would be able to leave this position either in the Ukrainian direction or in the Russian direction. So it seems that the worst scenario is awaiting for them. As for the city of Guliai-Polye, during the previous 24 hours, we received lots of very important updates. Let's discuss them in details. So this is the situation on the ground in the city of Guliai-Polye by the end of the 10th of December of 2025. And this is probably the last moment when the Russians were fighting, the last day when the Russians were fighting just for the eastern part, northeastern part of the city. So the Russians were fighting for the positions on the Russian side of the river of Gaichul. But so on the 11th of December, we received a first video published by pro-Ukrainian sources where we can see how Ukrainians were attacking Russians on the territory of the city of Guliai-Polye on the Ukrainian side of the river of Gaichul. So this is the first video that was published on the 11th of December that confirmed that Russians, as a result of offensive operation, managed to cross the river of Gaichul and to dig in deeper on the Ukrainian side of the river. So that was a turning point in the battle for the city of Guliai-Polye, and right exactly after the video was published, we started waiting whether the Russians would be able to improve their positions or to dig in deeper or not. And today we received the answer to this question, and the answer is yes. The Russians managed to cross the river of Gaichul and to dig in deeper on the Ukrainian side of the river. So these are the changes. This is the situation between the dates between the 11th and the 12th of December, and this is, for example, the river of Gaichul itself. As you can see, the Russians managed to cross the river at multiple places, and according to different mappers, of course, and to continue advancing already on the Ukrainian side. So we can say that currently Russians control up to 5% of the territory of the city of Guliai-Polye on the Ukrainian side of the river. The Russians have almost captured the Velika Street, the Vrozhanina Street, and the Russians managed to answer the central part of the city of Guliai-Polye, and currently there are very heavy clashes exactly for this area. The Russians are trying to clear this part of the city of Guliai-Polye with aviation strikes with the purpose to allow the Russian troops to move further deeper without less resistance from the Ukrainian side. So the situation is very complicated, but the most important for Russians is that they managed to cross the turning point in the battle, and most likely now we are entering the third phase of the battle for Guliai-Polye, which means that the Russians will continue clearing the city until the last and the final square kilometer. So as you can see, the situation is very complicated. One, most likely tomorrow we're going to see lots of updates because of meeting between Zelensky and European countries and the United States of America, if United States of America accepts this meeting. So let's wait and see what is going to be next. But as of now, the military summary channel reminds we condemn any violence in the world. Thank you for watching. Subscribe to my channel, put your likes, join my Patreon, and have a good day. Bye bye.